Good evening, everyone. I'm Kyle DeCoyan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Poetry Project at St. Mark's Church, which is where I am right now. One of my favorite things about this office is the ladder you see behind me, which leads up to a crawl space where we keep a bunch of archival art and posters, literary journals, old copies of our newsletter. I started working here almost exactly 2 years ago, and my first day alone in the office, the first thing I did, obviously, was I climbed up this ladder and looked around that space. I pulled open a filing cabinet and took out the first thing I found, which was an issue of the newsletter edited by Dlugos, who's one of my favorite poets and whose work lends the title to tonight's reading, No Day Unless I'm Part of It. I opened up this issue of the newsletter, and the editor's note began, "This is Tim Dlugos in my first letter as the editor of the Poetry Project newsletter. When I started working here as the editor, one of the very first things I did in the office at St. Mark's Church was I climbed up the ladder to look through the archives of all the people who came before me in this role." I've often felt the presence here of this poet, whose work matters so much to me. I feel the presence here of so many poets whose work matters to me. Joe Brainard, whose posters and art are stored in portfolios up there. The amazing poet and educator Melvin, who Patricia Spears-Jones invited to read here in the 80s. David Wojnarowicz, who lived and died just a block north on 2nd Avenue above the cinema. Cookie Mueller, who used to bring her kid with her to late-night readings in between art openings and dancing, and all of the poets and artists whose work we'll be sharing as part of tonight's broadcast. I feel grateful to sense them in these places where they lived and made work and fell in love and fought and cared for one another. I feel very grateful that we have a place today, the New York City AIDS Memorial, that holds space for these people, for the people we've lost, for the people who have fought for the health and dignity of our communities, and for the continued ways that HIV and AIDS bear upon us today. Even when we can't be together in these places, there is spirit that radiates outward by virtue of their being. And I'm glad that tonight, from the different places where we are, we can experience that through our listening together. I wish I could talk to so many of the poets whose work we're sharing tonight. I wish I could ask them questions and tell them how much their work has meant to me and how important their tender, sexy, fearful, brave, outrageous, loving work has been in the world. We are in the lineage of their struggle. Let's remember that in the first decades of the AIDS epidemic, our communities radically reimagined public action, and that has included the place of writing, music, art, and performance in public action. Our ongoing public health crises are deeply entangled with the police brutality and inequities in care that we're demonstrating against today, and which affect Black, brown, and trans members of our community especially. And for that reason, we'll be calling for donations throughout the event. Your donations support the Poetry Project and the New York City AIDS Memorial in the production of this reading, as well as the Okra Project, which provides food assistance and other sources of resilience for Black trans folks. When you text POEM to 44321, you'll receive a link where you'll have the opportunity to give. You'll text POEM to 44321. You'll see this link, and you'll follow it to this page. I hope some of you might feel called to do that now. This event is not free to produce, but we hope that in making it free to tune in, you might be encouraged to support this vital work of art, advocacy, and care in our communities. In our continued fight for true liberation, let us remember what we carry with us in memory, example, and spirit. The epidemic of HIV and AIDS is ongoing. Our work cannot be limited to remembering. So I hope we can look to this reading as we do the New York City AIDS Memorial and St. Mark's Church as a site where remembering converges with presence and possibility. Thank you to all of the readers who are sharing work tonight. Thank you for listening and tuning in. Thank you to Dave Harper and Keith Fox at the New York City AIDS Memorial. We'll start tonight's broadcast with a performance from Ethan Philbrick featuring and interpreting the work of Arthur Russell, and then we'll hear poems and writing from Assotto Saint, Cookie Mueller, David Wojnarowicz, Jaime de Biedma, Joe Brainard, Justin Chen, Essex Hemphill, Tory Dent, Tim Dlugos, and Melvin Dixon, before closing with a piece by Miguel Gutierrez with video footage of a dance performance from John Bernd. Be well, everyone, and thank you for tuning in.
Pamela Sneed reading Heart and Soul by Assotto Saint for Essex Hempful. Every day, every time I leave my house, everywhere I go, I pin on my knapsack twin petal small flags to which my allegiance is pledged, whole. These flags are not monkeys on my back. I carry them as a coat of arms, mantles of double brotherhood. They shield like second skin to drape my dreams. One floats rainbow, the other wings tricolor, both bold with movement. I am not ashamed of what they stand for when their meaning is questioned. These flags are not chips on my shoulders. I carry them as beauty spots, markings of double brotherhood. They shine like mirror beads to reflect prejudice. One unfurls the future of the queer nation. The other salutes African ancestors. Both wave SOS signals. I am not afraid to stand my ground when their beauty is challenged. These flags are not crossbones on my life. I carry them as amulets, emblems of double brotherhood. They spellbind like stars to stripe America, glory that becomes me in tribal rituals, battle against bigots I have honored with my blood. And everywhere I go, every time I leave my house, every day.
Hi, my name is Shiv. Thank you, Kyle, for inviting me. Thank you to the Poetry Project and to the New York City AIDS Memorial for putting this together. I'm going to read from the actress and writer Cookie Mueller's book, Walking Through Clear Water in a Pool Painted Black. It's the last entry in the book, and it's an exchange between her. It's an introduction to a letter that she received from her friend George Stevenson, a filmmaker who died of AIDS in 1982. Last letter, 1989. It's like wartime now, my aunt told me a few weeks ago. She lived in France during World War II. You young people are losing friends and relatives just as if it were bullets taking them away. She's right. It's a war zone, but it's a different battlefield. It's not bullets that catch these soldiers, and there's no bombs and no gunfire. These people are dying in a whisper. In 1982, my best friend died of AIDS. Since then, there have been so many more friends I have lost. We all have. Through all of this, I have come to realize that the most painful tragedy concerning AIDS death has to do with something much larger than the loss of human life itself. There is a deepening horror more grand than the world is yet aware. To see it, we have to watch closely who is being stolen from us. Perhaps there is no hope left for the whole of humankind, not because of the nature of the epidemic, but the nature of those it strikes. Each friend I've lost was an extraordinary person, not just to me, but to hundreds of people who knew their work and their fight. These were the kind of people who lifted the quality of all our lives. Their war was against ignorance, the bankruptcy of beauty, and the truancy of culture. They were people who hated and scorned pettiness, intolerance, bigotry, mediocrity, ugliness, and spiritual myopia. The blindness that makes life hollow and insipid was unacceptable. They tried to make us see. All of these friends were connected to the arts. Time and history have proven that the sensitive souls among us have always been more vulnerable. My friend Gordon Stevenson, who died in 1982, was a filmmaker. His insights turned heads. With his wife Muriel, who starred in his low-budget films, he was on the road to a grand film future, one that would serve to inspire and influence a lot of people. When Muriel died in a car accident in Los Angeles, it wasn't long after that Gordon started getting sick. We thought it was mourning that was wasting him until he was eventually diagnosed and admitted to the hospital with AIDS. He demanded that I didn't visit him there, and I honored his wish, so we talked on the phone every day, and he wrote me one letter. It was written on his own paper with his own designed letterhead, a big black heart inscribed with the words faith, hope, and charity on a background of on a background of orange. It was the last letter I received from him. He died the day I got it. I still have it. It's all frayed, but the message is still crisp. Dear Cookie, yesterday when I talked to you on the phone, I didn't know what to say. Yes, you're right. All of us high-riskers have been put through an incredible ordeal. This is McCarthyism, a witch hunt, a punishment for being freethinkers, freedom fighters, for being different. I think if you told kids that measles was caused by excessive masturbation and we were made to wear t-shirts to school that said contaminated so that no one would sit near them or play with them, and then put in a hospital ward with other measles patients to have swollen glands ripped out, spots cut off, radiation bombardment, and tons of poison to kill the measles, all the while their parents telling them that it serves them right, masturbation is a sin, they're all going to burn in hell, no allowance, no supper for a week, and the doctors telling them that it's the most fatal disease of the century, I think you could produce a large number of measles deaths. Instead, the child is kept at home, given ginger ale, Jell-O, and chicken soup, and reassured by a loving mother whom they trust absolutely that it's nothing serious and will go away in a few days. And it does. Our problem is that we are all alone in the cruelest of cruel societies with no one we love and trust absolutely. All we really need is bread, water, love, and work that we enjoy and are good at, and an undying faith in and love of ourselves, our freedom, and our dignity. All that stuff is practically free, so how come it's so hard to get? And how come all these assholes and professionals, friends and foes, family and complete strangers are always trying to convince us to follow their dumb rules, give up work in order to be a client of theirs, give up our freedom and dignity to increase their power and control? I still don't want you to visit me here. I'm much worse, visually, than when you saw me last. So until I'm feeling stronger and looking better, let's leave it this way. I hope this letter finds you in good spirits. I hope you're not upset that I don't want you to visit me. I wish you happiness, love, prosperity, and a limitless future. I know that somewhere there is a paradise, and although I think it's really far away, I know I'm going to get there, and when I do, you're going to be one of the first people I'll send a postcard to with a complete description of and map for locating. Courage, bread, and roses, Gordon.
There were so many days of waiting for him to die, the third and final time, and we've been talking to him daily because they said hearing is the last sense to go. Okay. Sometimes alone with him, the nurse outside the room, I take his hand and bend over, whispering in his ear, "Hey, I don't know what you're seeing, but if there is light, move towards it. If there is warmth, move towards it. If you see nothing, then try to imagine that one period of calm in the midst of the sky, just where it reaches the ocean. That's one place I've always seen as a point of time and space where everything is possible, where I could dream myself anywhere, in any position, and I said, move into that, be that, become that, merge with it, death. I don't necessarily believe that it's part of some cycle that repeats in other lifetimes, and what difference does it make anyway? Are you supposed to save all your living for the next life? I just tend to see it as some final moment where all the energy of my body will disperse. So now it's day 3 or 4 or 5, I can't remember, and his parents and his 2 sisters are visiting the Empire State Building. Me and Philip and Betty, one of his other sisters, are standing in the room. The doctor comes in and removes him from the pump and hiss of hoses, and he leaves the room immediately afterwards. There is this cloudy kind of sunlight moving around the room. The guy on the bed takes 2 breaths and arches his back almost imperceptibly, his lips slightly parted. I have hold of one leg, his sister one hand, Philip another hand, and part of his arm, and we're sobbing, and I'm totally amazed at how quiet he dies, how beautiful everything is, with us holding him down on the bed, on the floor, 14 stories above the earth, and the light and the wind scattering outside the window, and his folks at this moment standing somewhere on the observation deck of the Empire State Building, hundreds of stories up in the clouds, and the light, and how perfect that it is to me, how the whole world is still turning, and somewhere it's raining, and somewhere it's snowing, and somewhere forest fires rage, and somewhere else something moves beneath dark water, and somewhere blood appears in the hallway of a home of some old couple who aren't bleeding, and somewhere someone else spontaneously self-combusts. And somehow all the mysteries of this world as I know it offers me comfort, and I don't know beams about heaven and hell, and somehow all that stuff is no longer an issue. And at the moment I'm 16 foot tall, 548-pound man inside a 6-foot body, and all I can feel is the pressure. All I can feel is the pressure and the need for release.
Hi, my name is Francisco Márquez, and today I'm honored to be reading a poem by the Spanish poet Jaime Gil de Biedma. It's translated by Juan Ribó Chalmeta and Irina Urumova, and it's called Pandémica and Celeste. Just imagine now you and I, talking late in the night, man unto man, finally. Just imagine one of those nights, never to be forgotten, all rare communion, the half-empty bottle and the soiled ashtrays, done ranting about life. For I am to open up my heart, my unfaithful heart, naked waist down, hypocrite reader, mon semblable, mon frère. For it is not the orgasm chaser's impatience that which impels my body, bound to other bodies, preferably young at that. I crave too sweet love, tender love to sleep side by side, love that would cheer up my mornings, close by like a bird. I for one thing cannot undress, nor can I enter an embrace, not feeling, if only for an instant, the same dazzle of my 20s. To be well versed in love, to come to grips with it, one needs to have been alone. And one needs too, over 400 nights, with 400 different bodies, to have made love. For its mysteries, as the poet goes, are the soul's remit, yet only to read them in the book, which is the body. And this is why I'm glad I've rolled on gravel, 2 bodies half-dressed, groping for that shoulder's tendon. The memory of so many an occasion still moves me. The mountain road, those furtive embraces, so very opportune, and then the screeching of the brakes, standing up, blinded helpless by the light, our backs against a wall. Or the sunset by the river, naked and laughing, crowned with ivy. Or that Roman door in Via del Babuino. And memories of faces and cities I hardly ever knew, Glimpses of bodies, of staircases unlit, cabins, bars, deserted blind alleys, brothels, endless bathing huts and restrooms, moats of castles. Memories of you, more than anything. Oh, nights in love hotels, decisive nights in squalid pensions, in rooms that had just gone cold, nights that would give back to their guests that forgotten taste of themselves. History and body and soul, like a broken image. De la langueur coûtait assez mal d'être deux. Not despising, joyful as a midweek party, experiences of promiscuity. Although I know that nothing would be worth the labor of indiscriminate love had it not been for the true love, my love, the whole picture of my life, the sun that lights up the very nights I rob it of, his youth, mine, the music of my soundtrack, still smiling with the awkward grace of each body young, each anonymous tryst, lending it its light, lending its soul, and no handsome thighs there are that would not make me think of his, when we had just met, just before we went to bed. Neither is there a one-night stand that could compare with the passion that comes from knowledge, with the experience that is the years of our love. Because in love, time is of the essence, and sweet it is to trace with melancholy hand a path along your body, whilst one needs but a familiar gesture, a flutter on your lips, or the gentle throbbing of a member, to make me feel the wonder of that old grace, fleeting as a reflection. Against his fuzzy skin, once years have passed and we are nearing our end, I wish to press my lips, convoking the image of his body, and that of every body I ever loved, if only for an instant, undone by time, to ask for the strength to be able to live stripped of beauty, endurance, and desire, while we stay by each other's side, until we die in peace, the two of us, dying the death of those who've loved much, as they say.
Hi, my name is Ron Padgett, and I'm going to be reading from the writings of Joe Brainard, from his book, The Collected Writings of Joe Brainard, published by the Library of America. Autobiography. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1942. No, I wasn't. I was born in Salem, Arkansas in 1942. I always say I was born in Tulsa, though, because we moved there when I was only a few months old. So that's where I grew up, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A lot has happened between then and now, but somehow today I just don't feel like writing about it. It doesn't seem all that interesting, and it's just too complicated. What's important is that I'm a painter and a writer, queer, insecure about my looks, and I need to please people too much. I work very hard. I'd give my right arm to be madly in love. Well, my left. And I'm optimistic about tomorrow. Optimistic about myself, not about the world. I'm crazy about people. Not very intelligent, but smart. I want too much. What I want most is to open up. I keep trying. Queer bars. After an unsuccessful night going around to queer bars, I come home and say to myself, art. Art. Looking through a book of drawings by Holbein, I realized several moments of truth. A nose, a line, so nose-like, so line-like. And then I think to myself, so what? It's not going to solve any of my problems. And then I realize that at the very moment of appreciation, I had no problems. Then I decide that this is a pretty profound thought and that I ought to write it down. This is what I have just done, but it doesn't sound so profound anymore. That's art for you. Poem. Sometimes everything seems so, I don't know. And here, just 3 little excerpts from a piece of Joe's called 29 Mini Essays. Freud. From Freud we learn that when a wife smashes a vase to the floor, it is really her husband's head that lies there broken into many pieces. History. What with history piling up so fast, almost every day is the anniversary of something awful. People. If I'm as normal as I think I am, we're all a bunch of weirdos.
Hi, I'm Chen, and it's my honor and true pleasure to read a poem by Justin Chen from his book, Bite Hard. This poem was reprinted by Asian American Writers Workshop shortly after Chen's death in December 2015. Lick my butt. Lick the dry shit out of my sweaty butt cheeks. I've had my hepatitis shots, so it's okay. Lick my butt. 'Cause I'm an angry ethnic fag, and I'm in so much pain, so lick my butt. And the next time, when there's a multicultural extravaganza, and I'm asked for referrals, I can say, I know this guy. He's really cool. He licked my butt. Lick my butt and tell me about Michel Foucault's theories of deconstruction and how it applies to popular culture, a depressed economy, and this overwhelming tide of alienation. Lick my butt from the center to the margins and all the way back again. Read Noam Chomsky in bed to me and lick my butt. Lick my butt and give me my Prozac. Lick my butt and call your mother, she misses you. Flea dip the cat and lick my butt. Recycle and lick my butt. Lick my butt like you really mean it. Don't just put your tongue there because you think it's something you should do. Do it because you really, really want to lick my butt. My butt didn't always like to be licked. On the contrary, it hated anything wet and sloppy, poking blindly at its puckered, dour grimace. All it wanted was a nice pat, an occasional squeeze, a good warm sear, and snug underwear. It was happy with those. But then all those other butts started crashing in on its turf. On the sidewalks and under my bed, there were all these butts that said, no, demanded, lick me. My butt got tired of all that shit, and it just had to see what the fuss was all about. At first it approached the licking with extreme caution, making sure all the checks and balances were clearly present. Hey, my butt had every reason to be careful. It knows where it's been. It's had enough of this bigotry and poverty and violence. It's been on the wrong end of muggings and bashings. It's been working like a damn dog for years to make ends meet. It's been on the lam, on the block, on the contrary, and on sale for far too long. So when that first slobber, smack, slurp found its way into that crack and up that uptight little asshole, it was like the gay pride parade, the ice capades, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and Christmas happening all at once. Now, when I walk down the street and you see me smiling, it's because I'm imagining your tongue nestled in my butt cheeks, flicking away like a lizard in a mad tweak. Lick my butt, and I'll lick yours. We'll deal with the shit of the world later.
My name is Xandria Phillips, and I'm reading Object Lessons by Essex Hemphill. If I am comfortable on the pedestal you are looking at, if I am indolent and content to lay here on my stomach, my determinations indulged and glistening in baby oil and sweat, if I want to be here, a pet, to be touched, a toy, if I choose to be liked in this way, if I desire to be object, to be sexualized, in this object way, by one or two at a time. For a night or 1,000 days, for money or power, for the awesome orgasms to be had, to be coveted, or for my own selfish wantonness, for the feeling of being pleasure, being touched. The pedestal was here, so I climbed up. I located myself. I appropriated this context. It was my fantasy, my desire to do so and lie here on my stomach. Why are you looking? What do you want to do about it?
I'm Adam Atkinson. It's always an honor to share the work of Tory Dent, and tonight I'll be sharing Tory Dent's poem Huge Fragility from her collection Black Milk. Huge fragility. Osseous, osseous, osseous are the gulls, is the greatness of the white-capped ocean, the gulls like whitecaps pivoting toward the cove, the whitecaps like gulls that curtsy toward me in fleets of fleece, of frigid blue water, frigid and pitch and augmented by the unknown and the blaring wind in coercion with the sea, vast and cantankerous and in coercion with the sky. Those innocuous little clouds that so baroquely reside as if applied freshly, the oil of flesh and white, never quite brittle, the leafless hedges that barricade the shoreline in contrast to my humanness, flesh and white, never quite part of the formidable arrangement of land and sea and flying whitecaps. I can't locate any point of identity, no plane of reference to place myself in this prosaic setting, if only more prosaically, as in a snapshot of it, not taken, not remembered, not saved, not forgotten, within the landscape that alters cheaply, like the metallic eyes of a crucified Christ, which open then shut depending on which way you lean, left or right, except for the vanishing point of the pencil-thin horizon arbitrarily drawn to landmark eternity. A chalk-drawn finish line that lends sufficient emphasis to the marvelous ruse of my immortality with its excessive blarney or blatant lack of. Cruelly blanketed in the wetted edge of frigid blue water and pavilion of gulls in their pocky contrivance of heavenly ascension.
Hey, Tim, this is called Your New House, and Tim wrote it for me on my 40th birthday, and he read it at the party. 40 sign of plenitude or fullness in Semitic myths, 40 thieves, a surfeit of desperation and bravado, galloping on steeds through room of someone else's house, a big one with a fence and a name, 40 days in the wilderness eating roaches, wearing leathern straps in a downtown lifestyle, touch in the synoptic gospels, 40 nights of rain, the pitching deck resounding with the screeching animals. Make this madness stop, 40 years, until I lead you by the hand to the place I have prepared for you, especially. All that went before is so much furniture. Welcome to your new house, full of everything you need in a land of light. It belongs to you now, its name is today.
Hi, my name is Jayson P. Smith. I'm here to read a poem by the late, great Melvin Dixon. Before I do that or anything, I just want to offer a quick thank you and shout out to the Poetry Project for bringing us all together. I want to shout out the NYC AIDS Memorial for the work that they did in collaboration to bring us all together as well. Also, the Okra Project, which is the organization that we're supporting. They're a collective of Black, trans, and GNC chefs delivering resources and food and on-the-ground support to Black, trans, and GNC people. I don't have to tell you how important that is. I shouldn't, at least. So if you are moved by what you hear today, or regardless, find out what they're doing, find out how you can support. It is crucial, it is essential, and it has always been essential. So I hope that you'll join us. This is Turning 40 in the 90s, April 1990. We promised to grow old together. Our dream since years ago, when we began to celebrate our common tenderness as touch. So here we are. Dry, ashy skin, falling hair, losing breath at the top of the stairs, forgetting things. Vials of Septra and AZT line the bedroom dresser like a boy's toy army poised for attack. You're red, my blue, and the casualties are real. Now, the dimming in your man's eyes and mine. Our bones ache as the muscles dissolve, exposing the fragile gates of ribs, our last defense. And we calculate pensions and premiums. You are not yet 45, and I not yet 40, but neither of us for long. No senior discounts here, so we clip coupons like squirrels in late November, foraging each remaining month or week, day or hour. We hold together against the throb and jab of yet another bone from out of nowhere poking through. You grip the walker, and I hobble with a cane. Two witnesses for our bent generation. Thank you to the project. Thank you to NYC AIDS Memorial. Thank you, Melvin Dixon.
I have been losing all my life. All my life I've lost everything dear to me again and again and again and again. And I lost my best friend when we moved. And I lost teenage boyfriend to leukemia.
I once heard someone say, find out what your obsessions are and make art about that. In 2016, I became obsessed with the choreographer John Bernd. John Bernd was born May 8, 1953. He died August 28, 1988, at the age of 35 from AIDS-related complications. He was one of the first people in New York's downtown dance community to be diagnosed with HIV. It wasn't even called that yet when he found out. What you're watching now is a section from a piece he made in 1981 after his first hospital stay. It's a solo called Surviving Love and Death. In 2016, Ishmael Houston Jones asked me to help him reconstruct some of Bernd's work for the fall platform at Dance Space Project, named after a series of John Bernd's pieces. It was called Lost and Found. This platform focused on the impact of AIDS on the New York dance community, how this generation of artists who died created an absence, both in the sense that they were gone before they could produce mature work, and also in the sense that very few people knew about them. I had only heard about John in passing. I knew nothing about his work, really. I had no idea he had worked and toured with Meredith Monk. I had no idea that Ishmael had danced in 3 of his pieces, as had many other luminaries and heroes of mine, such as Yvonne Meyer, Stephanie Skura, Jennifer Monson, and K.J. Holmes. In essence, I had no idea that I had an ancestor who invisibly shaped the world that shaped me. John sang in his dances. He worked with objects. He almost always had a small wooden red chair on stage. He obsessively drew beautiful line drawings of roads, mountains, and temples that he projected on slides during his performances. He loved the beach. He composed his own music. He was one of the first choreographers to make explicitly queer work. He loved dancing. He improvised regularly at PS 122's weekly open movement night, where he met and danced with many of the people he would end up working with. He was my ancestor, and I didn't know about him until 2016, just 4 years ago. He was a tourist like me. On the day he died, I was probably getting all of my notebooks together for my senior year of high school. I was 17. Today, I am 14 years older than John Bernd ever got to be. John did everything he could to make and present his work. There's a story of how one time he basically escaped from the hospital so that he could do a show at St. Mark's Church. After the show, he took a taxi back to the hospital and snuck back in. Or, like this video on the right, Lost and Found, Scenes from a Life, Part 3. This is from a piece he did in 1985, just 6 days out of the hospital. In learning about him, I asked myself if I'd ever felt that level of drive to show my work. I know I've been full of ambition and determination, certainly, but have I felt, truly felt, that my life depended on it? I think I thought that I had, until I saw John Bernd's work. I used to think that I had a dance practice, but now mostly I have an email practice. In her book, The Gentrification of the Mind, Sarah Schulman states that the 3 things that are necessary for making art are cheap rent, cheap space, and time. None of these things really exist anymore, at least not in New York. I think the only hope left is people. If you can bring people together, then you can do something. But then, of course, the question still remains, where do you meet when you can't afford anything? John cleaned the floor early every morning at PS 122, which then allowed him to rehearse for a few hours for free before everyone else got there. On the left now, what you see is the beginning from his last piece, a duet with Jennifer Monson called Two on the Loose. It was 1988, 7 years after making Surviving Love and Death, and just a little over 6 months before he died. In the piece, he tells this story. I was in the hospital for my psoriasis, and I was in for a month, and it gets very severe, and one of the treatments that you get is a light treatment, and so I have to go in every few times a year, and this was one of them, so it didn't leave much preparation time for us. Jennifer came and visited, and we talked a lot about things, but it really wasn't practical to rehearse. I kept looking for a place I could rehearse. That just always became my project. It still is my project.
Good evening, folks. My name is Dave Harper, and I'm the Executive Director of the New York City AIDS Memorial. I want to start by thanking you for joining us this evening for No Day Unless I'm Part of It, a program we proudly presented with the Poetry Project to close out Pride Month here in New York City and on the 50th anniversary of the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, which first took place in 1970. Our memorial was built to honor the 100,000 New Yorkers lost to AIDS, including the artists whose words and works we experience tonight. One of the ways we do this is through cultural and educational programming, sometimes on site at the memorial, but for now, mostly online. We have known for nearly 40 years that silence equals death, and we hope that spending some time experiencing these works has allowed for reflection, not only on the past tumultuous decades shaped equally by loss and progress in terms of queer liberation and the AIDS epidemic, but equally on the last few months where we as a city and a nation have had to confront the twin pandemics of COVID and racial violence. I want to remind you that you can text POEM, that's POEM, to 44321 to donate in support of this program, the memorial, and the Poetry Project. I want to thank Kyle DeCuyan and the team at the Poetry Project for helping to make this evening a success. To close, I'd like to leave you with this quote from artist and writer David Wojnarowicz. If silence equals death, then art equals language equals life. Thank you all. Good night.